Flip or flop?
Get that stuff out of here. It's Southwest Bias.
It's Southwest Bias live from Studio K, presented by our friends at Circle K. And yeah, flip or flop. We've all watched those HGTV shows where they take a house and they flip it to sell it for more money eventually. But you know what they don't do on those shows? Show you the finished product first. They show you where the house was, the unmitigated disaster that they usually are. And then you know what comes next? The construction phase, the tear it down phase, the messier phase than what it was when they originally got the house. And usually there's some missteps along the way before you see the finished product. The unmitigated disaster for the Suns, the house that they lived in over the last 2 years, was one that no longer was palatable. And so many people out there demanded a rebuild. Well, guess what? Now you're dealing with the construction and the mess that comes along with it. And that first domino was a move this weekend in trading Kevin Durant to the Houston Rockets. And people around the internet are acting as if the Phoenix Suns dismantled a team that just went to the Western Conference Finals. It was a team that was 10 games under 500. A team that had disappointed historically over the last 2 seasons. It was a place where there was no joy, no happiness, no anything that you really wanted to be a part of. And now, the demo has started. Kevin Durant is in Houston, saying each and every one of you didn't want him here, and he was glad to be gone, essentially. So be it. Let the drama be somewhere else. Let Houston get all the praise for the trade right now, because guess what? Trade grades mean absolutely nothing. The major outlets, ESPN, CBS Sports, all the basketball websites that I went back and looked at, gave the Phoenix Suns an A or A+ for their original trade for Kevin Durant. And we know how that worked out in Phoenix. So Houston can enjoy all the praise from the national media and get crowned the next potential champion. But that doesn't mean that they necessarily won the trade. It also doesn't mean that the Phoenix Suns got a terrible return. Because guess what? They were backed into a corner. You want to be mad at the original sin of trading for Kevin Durant in the first place, of trading for Bradley Beal. That's where the anger should be. And you know what? I think, would have to consider it long and hard, 9 times out of 10, acquiring a guy like Kevin Durant. Because he is a top 5, top 10 player of all time. But in hindsight, unmitigated disaster. And now you're in the cleanup phase. And sure, you can point the finger at Kevin Durant. You can say he was Machiavellian and he was the one that pulled all the strings. And he did have an impact in this. You look at what Golden State reportedly offered back in February, and it's probably a slightly better package than Green, Dillon Brooks, the number 10 pick, and 5 second-round picks. But guess what? You didn't pull that trigger. Golden State wasn't willing to take that chance, and Kevin Durant had the right to voice his opinion. You can't love player empowerment when it lands you CP3 and Kevin Durant in Phoenix, and then hate it when it's used against you on his way out the door. You can't have it both ways. And I'm fine with empowerment and the players having a say in dictating where they go. But you know what? It's not just that, right? You got the baseline of what you were hoping for. People were saying for the last year, the Suns needed to get younger. They needed to get more athletic. They needed hard-nosed, tough defense and an attitude that they didn't have. Guess what? You also wanted draft capital. They got all that in this deal. They got a lottery pick. They got 2 starters from the second best team in the Western Conference. And they're leading, one of them being their leading scorer, and one of them being the guy that was the heart and soul of their defense. Is it a perfect trade package? Hell no. Could you have gotten more if Kevin Durant were 31 and under contract? Hell yes. But the realistic return for a 37-year-old Kevin Durant on a 1-year deal that could help push himself where he wanted to go, this is about the baseline of what a lot of people were expecting, but then changed their mind once they got it. They've torn this thing down to the studs. The construction hats are on and the real work starts now. Right? That's what it is. No longer do we have a super team era or a big 3 team era. Right? You now have an attitude era here in Phoenix, a mindset era. They want guys that come in and work hard, that have an edge, and that put in the effort. And guess what? I, for one, would much rather watch Heart and Hustle than whatever the hell we saw last year. Because they finished 10 games under 500 last year. If they finish 10 games under 500 this year, but show heart, hustle, and have pieces that could grow along the way, that's a hell of a lot better than where you were sitting last year. Not a great deal because there wasn't a great deal to be had. You committed the original sin, and you have to deal with it now. But tearing it down to this point is where a lot of people wanted to be. And now that it's a little messy, you're going to have to deal with it. That's where we are. But you get a lottery pick. You get a young guy. And you know what you've also done? You've broken up Kevin Durant's large contract into multiple pieces that you may be able to move if you so choose. Dillon Brooks will be intriguing to a team if you decide that he's not the right fit in Phoenix. Jalen Green is a guy that a team might be willing to take an additional chance on later on. This roster is not done. The construction has just begun. And so looking at it and going, well, this team's got 7 shooting guards. Okay. If they have 7 shooting guards when training camp starts, I'll be the first one ready to bang the door down, scream at the top of my lungs, and tell you that this is going to be an awful team that wasn't constructed in a brilliant way. But it's June. We're not even to the draft yet. So why don't we take a step back, pump the brakes on that? I know a lot of people want to talk about Jalen Green and Dillon Brooks, and they have their opinion. But I talked to one of their teammates, and I was told that they're 2 of the toughest, hardest-working players, and that Dillon Brooks is one of the best defensive players this person has ever played with. They're described as alphas and leaders. Doesn't that sound like exactly what the Suns were missing over the last few years? I am okay with this being the starting point of the rebuild. I am okay with a fun basketball team and an attitude and an approach that will start what this next Suns iteration and this next generation of Suns looks like. We are looking at the beginning of a construction phase. And when we see the finished product, at least close to the finished product when the season starts, then I'll pass some judgment, understanding that there'll still be things that are being worked on because this was always going to be a transitional year. So is it a flip or a flop? I don't know, but I feel better today about where the Suns are than I felt 5 days ago. But maybe that's just my Southwest bias. We welcome in the mustache behind the Mac, the producer that makes it all happen, Shane Diefenbach. Shane, how are you, my friend?
I'm doing just dandy. I'm glad that happened on a Sunday.
Oh, yeah. I'm really glad. So
yeah, I mean, I'm not that this is anybody's unique opinion because everything that has needed to be said about this trade has already been said. But the return you got was the best you're going to get. Like in terms of value, not in terms of fit and efficiency. Obviously, nobody knows what they're going to do with these two guys. Nobody knows what they're going to do in the draft. There's so much to come, but. Yeah, I mean, my first reaction when I looked at the trade was ew, because I'm not the biggest fan of Jalen Green, and not many people are. But the thing I have to keep reminding myself is, if they decide to keep him and go down that path, he's 23 years old. Like, there's a lot of room to grow. There's a lot of room to change, and I think just as Kevin Durant is going to be invaluable leading the young Rockets players, so is Devin Booker. He's at that point in his career, so. You can cope. You can say this was horrible. You can completely, sell the idea of being a Suns fan. But
hold on, if you are selling the idea of being a Suns fan and you're gonna leave, you never were a Suns fan to begin with. You never were, because being a fan means being around when certain things suck. We did it for a decade, and if you just jumped on the bandwagon in 2021. And now you're exiting because, well, I'm whatever. This isn't going to be fun. Then you're not a real fan. You're a fair weather fan. That's your prerogative. You can be that. That's fine. But don't call yourself a true Suns fan if that's the mindset you're going with. And let's do a blind taste test, Shane.
Okay.
If I tell you that in return for Kevin Durant, if I told you this last week, you were going to get a 23-year-old that was the number one scorer on a team, a defensive stalwart that has an edge to him, a lottery pick in this draft, wouldn't you have said that's not a bad return?
No, yeah. I think that was the best return, again, in terms of value, not in terms of fit and player, but in terms of value. Like if you're just looking at the star rating of these players, like if you're in a trade machine on 2K, I think you're getting a good return in that. You have to let it all play out. You have 2 first-round picks. A lot of people think this draft is super top-heavy with the top 5, but I talked about this last week. It's impossible to gauge drafts anymore. There are too many good players. The pool is way larger. I think at 10 there are going to be some really good players available.
Some of the best players in Suns history have come in that 9 to 13 or 9 to 15 range as well. Yeah,
exactly.
I'm not saying this is an unbelievable return. It's the reality of what you were going to get. But, we will get more into it. We've got our guest, Marc Stein, coming up in just a second. But I got to tell you what we heard about the Kevin Durant deal from him. We'll welcome Marc Stein, our NBA insider, in just a couple of minutes right after this. Got to tell you about our new friends at Vimy joining the fray here. Have you ever made a bet with a friend and then never got paid? I think we've all been there. I'm pretty sure I've done it to Shane in the past. Well, with Vimy, that problem isn't there anymore. You don't have to wait for that other exchange of money through an app. No. With Vimy, you make the app there and you're going to get your money. It's fun with friends. And guess what? You don't even have to do it for money. If you just want to do it to track your bets with friends, even if they're friendly wagers, you can do that with Vimy as well. You can bet on sports, video games, fantasy matchups, golf games, poker nights, push-up contests. If I bet you in that, expect the money to hit your account real soon, or a lot of other things. One-on-one challenges, group challenges, whatever you want to do, this app can handle it. So I highly recommend you go download the Vimy app and play today using the promo code PHNX. Available on the App Store and Google Play. Vimy, anyone, anything, anytime. And Mountain America Credit Union. You know what? Once you get that money from your Vimy account, put it in your Mountain America Credit Union account. You do that, and you know what? You're going to be able to get double points using your credit card and then pay it off with the money that you got in there, because you're going to get 2 times the points on your rewards credit card through July 31st with our friends at Mountain America Credit Union. You're going to then be able to use those reward points on things like gift cards, travel rebates, event tickets, so much more. You can stretch your dollar further thanks to Mountain America Credit Union in a time where we need to stretch that dollar as far as we can. So make sure today to become a member of Mountain America Credit Union. Use macu.com/double. Loans on approved credit. Offer can change or be withdrawn at any time. Limited time offers. Terms and conditions apply. We got to welcome in our insider, the man, the myth, the legend, Marc Stein. Marc, how are you, my friend?
Espo, not to be confused with Phil Esposito, not to be confused with Tony Esposito. However, I see you have somehow secured a Quinn Snyder-esque glasses deal. Look at you with the Suns orange specs. Quinn Snyder is jealous right now. He will be when he watches this pod.
For our older viewers, Sally Jesse Raphael will also be jealous. And I am 4th on the Esposito power ranking, the 2 you mentioned, and then Vincenzo Esposito, who played for the Toronto Raptors in the 90s and did absolutely nothing. And then I'm 4th on that list. But we appreciate you joining the 4th best Espo to talk about some basketball, Marc. And obviously a busy Sunday with Game 7 of the finals, but the pregame, the precursor, the Kevin Durant trade. What can you tell us in terms of how this deal went down and how it wound up being the Houston Rockets?
Well, it's interesting. All season long, all the messaging out of Houston was no. We are not going to pursue Kevin Durant. We are not going to trade for Kevin Durant. I really feel like the playoffs did change the calculus here because they really struggled offensively. This was the West's number 2 seed. And I would also say, I think what enabled Houston to kind of take that firm position and ultimately amend it to a degree is they were uniquely suited to do this, because they are I don't know if there's any other team, certainly no other team that was in the bidding that could give up Jalen Green and the number 10 pick and Dillon Brooks and say, you know what, we're fine losing all that because we have plenty of reinforcements to replace all of that and bring in Kevin Durant now. Like, Dillon Brooks had a very positive impact as a Rocket, despite all the skepticism when the Rockets made those moves to bring in Dillon Brooks and Fred VanVleet with such a young group. But they've got Amen Thompson and Tari Eason, and they've got other players who can soak up those minutes that Dillon Brooks had. And yes, it's the number 10 pick. And in all of the reporting that Jake Fisher and I did leading up to this trade, we've just been hearing over and over and over about how much the Suns wanted at least one pick in the lottery in this draft. But from the Rockets' seat, the Rockets already have a slew of players under 25, and scouts routinely describe this draft as it's an 8-player draft. So from the Houston perspective, they're fine surrendering number 10 because from their seat and from the way a lot of teams out there look at it, it's an 8-player draft. The Suns' perspective is, no, we're going to get a very good player at 10, or maybe that 10 pick gets moved for multiple picks in this first round. We know Phoenix wants a big man, so there's optionality there that the Suns didn't have. The Suns felt like they had to get in this first round and took what ultimately was the best deal on the table for them. But I think you can tell by the tone of my voice, I like it a lot better for the Rockets than I do for the Suns.
Was this the best offer on the table from what you can tell in your reporting? Obviously, Kevin Durant significantly impacted this process, making it clear where he wanted to go. But of the people that made offers that KD was willing to go to, was this the best one on the table?
I think so, based on what the Suns wanted to do here. I mean, look, Jalen Green is also, he's a former number 2 pick in the draft. He's only 23. He certainly has lots of room to get better. Jalen Green is a good player, so it's not like the Suns only came away with number 10 here. They get Jalen Green, and if we go back to Matt Ishbia's end of season press conference, he was very clear that toughness, they want toughness and edge, and Dillon Brooks does give them that. I mean, he is a starter level player. So, it's not like they got nothing here, but it is impossible to judge this trade without remembering what went out the door. And it was just such a staggering amount of trade assets that the Suns surrendered to get Kevin Durant. Fair or not, like it or not, this trade is going to be judged against what went out the door to get him. And it's going to be judged against what this team achieved after trading for Kevin Durant, which is winning one playoff series and now heading for its 4th coach in Matt Ishbia's 4 seasons. There's no way to get around those realities. I mean, I know I don't have to, you live this every day and you're emotionally invested in it. So I know I don't have to explain this to you. And everybody, I can't see the chat, but I'm sure everybody in the chat is very well acquainted with the dynamics too. And those are the realities. The Suns are being judged based on those other factors. I mean, like you said, Kevin Durant had an influence here because numerous interested teams knew he was only open to do an extension with Houston and San Antonio and Miami. And that list, as I reported a week ago from last Sunday, would have included the Knicks if the Knicks didn't say, we're not going to be pursuing you. The Knicks basically took themselves out of the running before the process really even started. So that was certainly a factor that Kevin Durant could control things. But the other thing is he turns 37 in September and he only has 1 year left on his deal. And those are also factors.
When you look at Jalen Green and kind of the perspective around the NBA of him, it feels like the overwhelming consensus is that he's a negative asset with that contract. Is that kind of the feeling that you've
I think that it's too harsh to put it like that. He is a former number 2 pick and a very good player. With upside. The way I would say it is, when he got his extension in October, 3-year deal, $105 million, the reaction in a lot of front offices was the Rockets just signed him to trade him. That was among various rival teams. That was a belief that the Rockets saw him as someone that they were eventually going to move. And look, that's how it played out. So that's a perception that has been validated by what we've just seen. But the questions, I would say the questions are more, I don't think a contract in the 30 millions is unreasonable for a player of Jalen Green's caliber. For all he didn't do in the playoffs, he also did have a 38-point game against Golden State. He is not the finished article. There is still room for him to grow in his game. I don't think 33 million a year or whatever it is, whatever it is in the 30 millions, I don't see that as outrageous. The questions are, does he fit alongside Devin Booker? The Suns still don't have a traditional lead guard, and they still have Bradley Beal on the roster, who is going to be difficult in the extreme for the Suns to extricate themselves from that contract. Those are the issues to me.
In the reporting that you and Jake did on the Stein line, your fantastic Substack newsletter, did you guys get the sense that any other deal was close to the finish line in terms of KD? Because everything we heard out here was that there really wasn't anything overly close. But what did you hear from the national perspective?
What I reported yesterday after the trade was I think Minnesota removed itself before the weekend hit. I think the Wolves were like, look, we know Kevin Durant doesn't want to be here, so we're not going to push this. We're not going to pursue this. Miami, Jake and I reported it Friday night that Khalil Ware was just not in this deal. And that was a firm position from the Heat. And without Ware, I don't think there was any deal they were going to put on the table that was going to interest Phoenix. The best pick Miami could give up was 20, not 10. And the Suns wanted a lottery pick in this deal to either make a pick at 10 based on who's on the board at that point, or at least give themselves the optionality to trade down and maybe get 2 firsts. If again, I'm not saying that is what the Suns are going to do. I'm merely saying that is optionality that they now have. So I think that was important, that the combination of Green and his potential and a contract that, again, I would not label Jalen Green's contract as unmovable in the future if they feel like it doesn't work out with he and Book as a fit. But Jalen Green, a former number 2 pick on what I would term is a reasonable contract for a player of his ability. Dylan Brooks is obviously a player that they like based on everything Matt Ishbia has told us about the kind of team he wants to see the Suns have on the floor, and the number 10 pick. These are all commodities that the Suns would have wanted to add to their team. So I'm not surprised that the Rockets won the race. And again, the Rockets were uniquely positioned to be able to put those kinds of things into a trade and feel like they didn't touch any of their most prized youngsters or draft picks. I mean, 27 and 29. I know that there's this messaging out there that the Suns are fine not getting those picks back. I would treat that with some serious skepticism. I'm sorry. I think they did want at least one of those picks back, and they were just not even on the table because the Rockets are betting on the notion that the Suns are going to continue to struggle.
In your estimation, I'm going to kind of put you on the spot, so forgive me, but in your estimation, are the Phoenix Suns set up better for their future today than they were on Saturday, or are they still kind of stuck in purgatory here?
I think the answer really is somewhat of both. I think this is the best deal they probably could have manufactured in the circumstances. Other teams looked at the Suns as desperate here. They knew Phoenix wanted to get off of Kevin Durant's contract because it was the only move the Suns could make if they are committed to Devin Booker, and they are committed to Devin Booker. That has been made clear from both the Suns side and Book's side. They want to continue in tandem. Devin Booker was not going to be made available in trade. Bradley Beal is not tradable and has a no trade clause on top of it. This was really the only course the Suns felt they could go. They didn't feel like bringing Kevin Durant back was feasible after months and months and months of everyone in the world knowing that they have been looking at Kevin Durant trade scenarios since February. So the Suns felt like this was the move they had to make. They made the best of it. They got back players in a draft pick they feel that can help, but it is also purgatory or purgatory adjacent because you cannot forget what they gave up to get Kevin Durant. And it was, Bridges, Cam Johnson, and 4 firsts and a swap. It's a lot.
An immense amount to give up, and especially for where you wound up. He is Marc Stein. You can follow him on DLLS Mavs. You can also find him on Twitter and go subscribe to his Substack, The Stein Line. You won't regret it. The best news and views in the NBA from him and Jake Fisher. Mark, good luck with Cooper Flag tomorrow.
Thank you for such kind words, and a quick shout out to my friends on the PHNX graphics team. We have been using your guys' graphics religiously in all of the Durant reports, and a very, very too kind picture of me today to promote this appearance. Thank you guys. Love you guys. We will be talking soon, I am sure.
He is Marc Stein. Give him a follow. That is another edition of Southwest Bias. Appreciate all of you for being here and being in the chat. And you know what? Look, we'll get through this together. We'll be here every day live at 11 a.m. to take you through it. For the mustache behind the Mac, you can follow him at Shane Deef. You can follow the show at PHNX_Suns. You can follow me at Espo, and it's actually at PHNX_Sports. You can follow our Suns show at PHNX_Suns. Guess what? We're here. Construction has begun. And if I were bought and paid for by the Suns, I'd dress a hell of a lot better. Ahoy, hoy!
We all silly like the mayor.